friend Jody Ann here from Malut Advance, and today I want to share a word of encouragement with you. Now, for the month of October, we at Malut, we have been speaking about breakout, and we have spoken about the many situations in which a person can break out. And today I want to share with you from the passage 1 Samuel 22 verses 1 to 2. And this passage really speaks about David running from Saul, right? But before I go into 1 Samuel 22 verse 1 to 2, just want to give you an idea as to how David felt. What was his posture like when he was running from Saul. So Psalm 57 was written by David, and this was at the time when he was, as I said, running away from Saul. Here it goes. Be merciful unto me, O God, be merciful unto me. For my soul trusteth in thee, yea, in the shadow of thy wings will I make my refuge until these calamities be overpast. I will cry unto God most high, unto God that performeth all things for me. He shall send from heaven, and send me from the reproach of him that would swallow me up. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. My soul is among lions, and I lie even among them that are set on fire, even the sons of men whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongues a sharp sword. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, into the midst whereof they are fallen themselves. My heart is fixed, O God, my heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise. Awake up, my glory, awake. Psaltery and harp, I myself will awake early. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people. I will sing unto thee among the nations. For thy mercy is great unto the heavens, and thy truth unto the clouds. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. So, this psalm speaks to the fact that David was in distress. David was running from Saul, so he was a bit fearful. But it was not until David was in the cave, that he found that courage, to go after what God created him for. It was not until David was in the cave that he had that confidence that, yes, I am a form of Messiah. I have that Mashiach anointing on my life, and because of that, he continued to pursue, the crown that awaited him, because we all know that David was crowned king of Israel. So 1 Samuel 22 1 to 2 tells us where David, he departed and he escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brethren and all his father's house heard that he escaped to the cave, they went down to him. And not just his family members, but here who else went. So everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented gathered themselves unto him. So they too went into the cave of Adullam, and he became captain over them, that's David. And there were with him about 400 men. If you read the previous verses, you will understand why David went to the cave of Adullam. Why? Because, Saul became jealous. The people at that time were praising David because, remember, he just killed Goliath. And, he was the talk of the town, and people respected him and honored him. And because of this, Saul pursued to kill him. So he ran to the cave of Adullam. Now, Adullam is the name of a place. And the definition of Adullam is that it's a hiding place. It is a place of retreat. It is a place of refuge. and basically he provided justice for the people. Now, Adullam was assigned to the tribe of Judah, because remember, when the tribes were going into Canaan, each of the tribes got a part of land, right? So Adullam was assigned to the tribe of Judah, and we know David was king of Judah. Adullam is a Canaanite city located in Judah. So it was located in the hills of Judah. Now, Adullam, the Hebrew value for Adullam is 144. And if we go back in the scriptures, we will realize even in Revelation speaks to the 144,000 persons representing the 12 tribes of Israel. So we can come to understand that, Adullam speaks to Israel because it is what? A part of Judah. Now 144 speaks to resting place. It speaks to a place of peace, a place of repose. And in Adullam there was a cave. So I mentioned earlier that David went to the cave. Why? He wanted peace because Saul was threatening to kill him. He went there to, rest for a while. Rest from who? From Saul. And not just David, but other persons as well, his family members. And the Bible tells us those who were discontent, those who were distressed, those who were in debt. So all of them were in the cave, desiring to have peace. Cave in Hebrew is known as Mearah. That's Mem, Ayin, Resh, and He. And this gives us a value of 315. Now, for every value, it means something, right? And 315 speaks to a stronghold, it speaks to a cave, it speaks to a cavern, to have being, or firmness. So, yes, they were at a place where, they felt alone, they felt distraught, they felt like giving up. But it was not until they went into the cave, they became firm, they come to understand who they were, and they came to have a, different attitude from how they went into the cave. Now, the Bible tells us that there were about 400 men. In verse 2, 1 Samuel 22, verse 2 tells us about 400 men were in the cave. 400 men. We need to understand that even though it speaks to a cave, within the cave of Adullam, there were many other caves. So the 400 men could have been in the cave, right? Now 400 speaks to Tav. And Tav is the last letter in the Hebrew alefbeit. Tav speaks to covenant. It speaks to, revealing God's truth in the world, the impression left on the soul in order to reveal God's truth. So remember, David was to be king because Samuel anointed him and he was to be king. And if he is to be king, it means that God has a covenant with him, right? He has a relationship with God. And when David went into the cave, that was one of his moments of processing, right? To be that king, to be that type of Messiah, that type of Mashiach, who would deliver the people from their enemies. The Bible describes 3 sets of persons. So I call them the M&M, right? Not the sweet, not the chocolate sweet that you eat, but the M&M describes persons who were, similar in nature to David. See, they had similar feelings because they were what? Running away from Saul. So the M&M represent those who were, the first M speaks to the matzok, and this is a Hebrew word. It simply means those who were distressed. And distress can otherwise mean those who were pressed upon, those who were constrained, those who were oppressed. The N represents the Nashah. Those who were in debt, those who were deceived, those who were deluded, those who were tricked. And the final M speaks to the Mearah. And that's supposed to be familiar with all of us. Mearah, bitter. Those who were discontented, those who were greatly distressed. So These three words speak to those who, were in similar position like David. And these describe three types of persons. And one of the meaning for three is to lift up. How can these persons, come out of their situation? How can they, how can God lift them up out of their situation? It is not until they go through that cave-like situation, it is not until they go through, that place where they feel burdened, they feel cast out, they feel, depressed, they feel hard-pressed. It is not until they go through that situation where they can become processed. Now, if you have an orange, right? What do you do with the orange? You get the juice from the orange, right? And in order to get the juice from the orange, what do you have to do? You have to squeeze the orange, right? To get out the juice and all of that good stuff. Now, there are many times as individuals, we run from problems or, Lord, why me? Why me? Why me? God, what did I do wrong? But in order for value to come from us, in order for us to break out, we have to be squeezed. Whether we like it or not, we have to be squeezed. So, as individuals, we do not go around and say, Lord, put me in some fire. Lord, send some salt to pursue me. Lord, send those fiery trials and those fiery darts. No, we do not do that. But God sees it fit to give us some thorn in our flesh. God sees it fit to, allow some souls, and souls can be a person or a situation, to pursue us. Why? Because He wants us to break out. We have to understand that it is the problems that stirs us to break out. If you are not going through any problem, there's no need to break out. No. So God has to provide those seasons of testing, those seasons, those cave-like seasons, those dark situations, that cloudy moments where He has to process us to bring out the value in us. What does cave has to do with breakout? Cave, breakout, cave, a dark place, cave where somebody go and hide, somebody take refuge. Huh? What does that have to do with breakout? Well, it has a lot to do with breakout. Now, David and the others, the M&Ms, went to the cave. Why? Because they saw it as a place of refuge. Did I mention that the Cave of Adullam was on a hill? Cave on a hill. And they went to this hilly place for refuge. What they didn't realize was that even though, yes, running in, they might not be aware that, okay, then, well, this is a hilly place and the view is nice. But when they came out from that season of processing, then they had an vantage point over their enemies. They could see from an eagle's eye, the whereabouts of their enemies. They can know, the different paths to take to overcome such a person, to overtake such an army. They could know all of that. Now, the cave is a place of isolation, but it is also a place of exposure. Well, David and the others went there to hide. They were at that one spot where they were just there hiding from their enemies. But it was in that cave David's heart was exposed. What do I mean by that? It is in that cave David could have, written the psalm that I just read. And he wrote many other psalms in that cave. Psalm 19, Psalm 57, Psalm 142. So his heart was open to God. He expressed that, God, this is how I'm feeling. Saul is pursuing me. What do I do? Remember, David came from a place where the persons were applauding him. They were saying, Saul killed thousands and David killed 10,000. So, who don't want somebody to applaud you? But what we need to understand is that even though those persons, were applauding David and, honoring David, that wasn't enough to defeat his enemy. He had to go into that cave to seek, a way out, to seek Hashem, to seek the God who is a God of refuge. He had to go into that hiding place, the shadow of the Almighty, in order to come out strong, in order to come out bold, in order to come to that place of authority and to walk into what God has placed in him. The cave is also seen as a place of hiding, covering one's identity, because if you go in the cave, nobody will know, your whereabouts. He went to what? I think he went to Gath. He went to different places, but the truth is he couldn't hide there. He had to go to a dark place where it was all about him and God. It is in that place of hiding, where, we don't want the world to see us. It's just me and God. It is in that place of hiding where our truest potential is revealed. If David didn't went into the cave, how would he know that he was a good writer? How would he have penned Psalm 19 and 57 and 142? How would he knew that he was a mighty man, a leader of the army of Israel? It was in the cave that allowed him to see his truest potential. The cave represents a temporary dwelling place. There is an expiration date for all the problems that we go through. But guess what? Sometimes we play the pity party game where God has set a time frame for our problems. There's a particular season, a particular time frame, an expiration date for whatever cave-like situation you are going through. If you continue to read 1 Samuel 22, it tells us that David came out of the cave. So if David would be the leader for the army, he couldn't have fought in the cave. The cave was just his training ground. The cave was that processing moment, that season of processing where he came out mighty, but he came out with those 400 men to fight the Philistines and to fight other nations, to fight the enemies of Israel. Now the cave is also seen as the potential place of death, that place of darkness, because a cave is supposed to be dark, right? And in the Bible, it speaks of the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham and the other patriarchs were buried. Lazarus was placed in a cave. Even Yeshua, the tomb is considered to be a cave. The cave is considered a place of death. It was even in the cave of Adullam, David got the opportunity to kill Saul, but he refused to kill him. Why? Because David understood that Saul, even though he was wicked, he was anointed by God. It is in the cave where we die to self. David had to die to self in order to rule the nation of Israel. David had to die to self in order to lead those 400 men, because he couldn't be pious in leading them. He couldn't be filled with pride. No. He had, to die to self. He had to express his concerns to God. God had to strip him of every single thing that would hinder him from receiving that crown to rule over Israel. The cave is also seen as the training ground to bear fruit. It is out of the cave the army of Israel was formed. So hear what? The M&Ms. The people went in distressed. They went in deceived. They went in embittered. But when they came out, they didn't came out the same way they went in. No. They came out strong. They came out brave. They came out as mighty men. And this is what an army supposed to be made of. Mighty men, not men who are weak and distressed. Because if you have that mentality, you have just lost the war. Come on. But they came out as mighty men, representing the Lord of host. And First Chronicles 12 verse 8 tells us that these men were mighty, they were brave, they were strong, right? It was out of the cave-like situation, that cave-like, process, David birthed a new skill, and he became a writer. There are many times we want to, forget about our cave-like situations, forget about those hard-pressed moments. But let me tell you, it is in those hard-pressed moments, it is in those darkest moments, darkest situations, we come to understand who we truly are, and we come to understand the skills and the abilities that God has placed in us, to rectify solutions. Can you imagine David not going in that cave? Who would David be today? Would we get the opportunity to speak about David as a man after God's own heart? Think about it. The cave represents that place of transition, right? The cave brings us to maturity. Now, they went in as broken people, but while being processed in the cave, they came out what? As persons who were whole. A broken person cannot fight. No, you have to be well processed. You have to be delivered in order to fight the enemies that are at war against you. The cave speaks to that place of transition. So hear what? They came out with a new attitude. They came out with a new language. They came out with a new behavior. Now, remember I said Saul was pursuing David. David got the opportunity to kill Saul, but he refused. I might be given the opportunity to just kill Saul. He came to that place where he appreciated his adversary. How many of us can appreciate, those enemies, whether it be people, whether it be situations? How many of us can come to appreciate those hard times we went through? They are very important. The cave also helps us to tap into God's frequency. That language, that it, to know what to do. When David came out of the cave, he knew where to go because God was with him. He poured out to God, God revealed himself to him, God answered his prayer, and God was with him, because even when they came out of the cave, and went to battle, they won the battles. Why? He was on the same frequency with God. So when we go through our cave-like situations, it is not to make us worse. We're supposed to have a new attitude. We're supposed to walk according to that frequency God has for us, that language that He wants us to speak. And when I say language, I mean you're on the same frequency, you're on the same level, of God. You are walking according to His precepts. So if He says go that way, yes, we go that way. We do not go the opposite way. The cave allows us to develop an attitude of dependency. Dependency on who? Not on Saul, not on the persons who were, applauding him and honoring him and give him all kinds of names and, no. The cave helps us to depend on God. Because the truth is, there are many of us, we go to churches that have large congregation. Many of us, we grow up in communities that have many persons, or even families that are extended families. But there are times in our lives where we feel lonely, even though we may have a lot of persons around us. And yes, there are many men of God and women of God and apostles and prophets and you name it. But none of them can give you that joy. None of them can give you that hope. None of them can really take you out of that cave-like situation. And the only thing you can do is run to God, like David. Kill him, put him in the cave, that place of darkness, hide his body, cut him in pieces, all manner of evil. And this showed a level of maturity within David. David came to understand vengeance is the Lord's. When we run to God, He will strengthen us. Because if we see God as our cave, or as our fortress, or as our refuge, He will strengthen us. Because we have a covenant with Him. We are partakers of the covenant. And if we are partakers of the covenant, it means that God will do whatever it is he needs to do so that we can be established, so that we can represent him the way he wants us to represent him, and so that we can get the victory that he has in store for us. Now, Adullam has the value. So Adullam is a Hebrew word for the place Adullam, right? And it has a value of 144. I said that earlier. And Mearah, which is cave, has the value of 315. Now, if we add the numbers of 144, so if we add 1 plus 4 plus 4, we get 9. And if we add the value of the word cave, which is 3 plus 1 plus 5, it gives us 9. What is this saying to us? 9 speaks to us being strong. 9 speaks to us being powerful. It speaks to cover, to sprout, to grow up, and it speaks to pregnancy. Now, and this is evident. This is evident in the characteristics of the men, because they sprout out to be what? Man of valor. They sprout out to be what? Men who are strong and mighty, who are fitting to be a part of an army. It speaks to the powerful one. It is through that cave-like situation they were able to gain the strength of Hashem, of course, in order to fight their enemies. When we speak about pregnancy, we refer to the woman, right? Having a womb, the woman have a womb, and there's something in the womb. The baby, or there's someone in the womb. The baby in the womb comes out. So the baby doesn't stay in the womb forever. There's a season, for pregnancy. And so the cave is considered, or the cave is described as a womb. Huh? As a womb? No, cave in Hebrew, Mearah, is feminine. And if something is feminine, it means that it produces. So here it goes. The men, David and his men, had to go in that cave, had to go in that womb, so that they could produce what? Produce the strength, produce the vitality, produce the confidence, produce the hope, that they needed to come up. Because you can't live in a cave forever. You need to go into the world and explore the world. So they had to be in that cave, that womb, so that God produced within them that frequency, that language that they needed for the next season in their lives. Now, the 9th letter in the Hebrew alefbeit is Tet. Tet is considered as a womb. Pregnancy means what? Give birth to potential. It speaks to that hidden goodness. Without the cave, that king would have come forth. Because the cave, David had to go into that cave to be processed in order to be king. David and the men had to go in that cave in order to come out as what? Strong and mighty warriors. David had to go into that cave so that the Mashiach's anointing could be revealed and could be seen in his life. So the Bible tells us that about 400 men were, in the cave with David. 400 speaks to Tav, that is the last letter, the 22nd letter in the Hebrew alefbeit. Now, Tav speaks to covenant. If David and God didn't have a relationship, do you think David would have been victorious over Saul? No, he wouldn't even have survived one day in the cave. But because the covenant of God was upon David's life, he had to be king. Right? He had to be king. He had to reign. He had to rule. He was a form of Mashiach, that is a form of Messiah. So he had to rule and to play that part in Israel, to play that role in Israel to usher in the Messiah. Now, Aleph, 400 represents the 400 men But you have David. So David would be considered as an additional person. And one in Hebrew, well, the Aleph is the first letter in Hebrew, and it has a value of 1. Now, if we add 400 plus 1, we get 401. And the 401 speaks to a plowshare, which speaks to the language, the alefbeit, that frequency, that specific frequency that you need to tap into so that you can represent God, so that whatever the thoughts of God is, or whatever the thoughts of God are, it can be revealed through you on the earth to rectify whatever problems, to rectify whatever situations. 401 speaks to Yah is salvation, and Yah represents God. So David and the men represented the salvation for the people. Why? Because it was out of the cave they came to form the army of Israel, and the army of Israel defeated the nations that were suppressing them or wanted to suppress them. How could this be possible? Only God himself could be their salvation. Only God himself could be their refuge. Not the armor of Saul, no, or the armors of the army, but God himself was their armor. God himself was their stronghold. God himself was their shield. And it is because of this they were able to conquer it. It was because of this they had that specific language to conquer nations for the glory of God. So we said that Tav was the 22nd letter in the alphabet. 22 speaks to that language. It speaks to the alphabet itself, and the alphabet really speaks to a specific language, the language of God. Right? 22 also speaks to unity. Now, God had to do something in David in order for those who were distressed, embittered, deceived, to form an army. Those are different. 400 men. David must have had God in him for him to unite those people together. Because remember, how they went in was not the same way they came out. So God had to play an important role, in David's life. God had to play an important role while David was in the cave. So that is why it is very important for us to pour out our heart to God. I cannot pour out my heart to Jermaine, because when I pour out my heart to Jermaine, she might say, "Oh, Jody," she give me a little hug or a little kiss here and there, and I still feel the same way. You understand? So we have to pour out to our refuge. We have to pour out to our stronghold, God. Because the truth is, Jermaine just sees the moment I'm in, but God sees the future. God sees that, okay, Jody has to go into this cave of Adullam to be processed in order to meet the Philistines in the next season of her life. So God knows all that we go through, and it's best to pour out to him. We see in the scripture that I read, David poured out his heart to God, and God answered. God answered him and gave them the victory. Now, the people, when they went into the cave, God had to cut them away. Cut them away from what? Those emotional stress, those negative emotions that they went through. Because the truth is, if they were to come out, they cannot come out the same way they went in. That don't make no sense. What am I saying? When we go through our times of distress, or emotional turmoil, God has to cut us away from those emotional baggages. Because if we are supposed to be victorious, we cannot walk with a heavy heart. We cannot continue the journey with sadness and depression and all of that. You would be already defeated. So God has to, take us away, put us in a season, of loneliness, where really and truly we have to depend on him. So he had to cut away fear from the people as well, because they were fearful. I mean, Saul, the mighty big bad Saul, pursuing David. I'm fearful. But God had to cut them away from those fear and help them to understand that, yes, Saul may come, but I am the one who made Saul. Yes, Saul may come with, with his different men pursuing you, but trust me, I can bring down Saul. And what God wanted them to do was to depend on him. Now, the 8th letter, you may flee to a cave. You may flee to, that place of isolation, that place of refuge. But trust me, you see that cave of Adullam that God provides for you, that season, of crushing, will bring out life in you. Because guess what? Life came out of those men, and they could gain victory over their enemies. And after that, David fought many wars. He was victorious. And he was king over Israel. So it goes to show that the potential in you, through those processing, through that cave-like experience, life will come out of you. So don't you sit there thinking, oh God, what did I do to deserve this? You see, the problems that you go through will develop character in you. In order to go to the next level, you have to be processed. You have to become mature. Because guess what? If David didn't go through that cave-like situation, if God didn't allow David to go into that cave, maybe David would have killed Saul. The anger, and worse, he didn't do Saul anything. He could have killed Saul. But that place, that moment, of isolation, allowed him to become mature. To become mature to that place where he could look at Saul and say, Saul, I love you. Saul, I respect you, even though you try to kill me. So we have to respect, we have to come to appreciate, those cave of Adullam that God placed us in. Many times we say, devil, I rebuke you. But guess what? God allow that cave-like situation to meet you. God allow you to experience that cave-like situation because he wants you to be a better person. So, we are humans. And the truth is, we want an easy life. Talk truth. Shame the devil. We want an easy life. Right? We do not go around and say, Lord, send some thorn in my flesh. But guess what? If we never go through problems, we wouldn't go to God. Talk truth. If we didn't go through problems, God wouldn't see some of us. So God has to provide those opportunities. So problems are really opportunities for your potential to come forth. Problems are really opportunities for you to come to functionality. Problems are really opportunities for you to dominate, take over, rectify situations. So the problems that we face are very important for us to be who God calls us to be. Why does a person break out? Because they are frustrated of the situation they are in, right? There has to be a problem in order for you to desire breakout. And we have to see Adonai as our rock. We have to see Adonai as our fortress. We have to see Adonai as our stronghold. So in your moment, of feeling down pressed and, feeling like, okay, I can't make it anymore, you have to see Adonai. You have to see Adonai as your rock. You cannot look on Saul, because the truth is, if you look on Saul, you will be distracted. If David was in the cave thinking, oh God, where is Saul now? Oh, how many persons is he sending to capture me? He would miss the point. But you have to remain focused, cry out to God. Ask God, God, rescue me. What do I need to learn from this? Where are you taking me? It must be for something greater. It must be for something greater. The covenant keeper will not allow us to fall in the pit, fall by the wayside for our enemies to conquer us. No, he's a covenant keeper, and he's responsible for us, and his duty is to ensure that we are victorious. The Cave of Adullam, I mentioned that it was located in a hilly area. You may enter the cave like the M&Ms. The disheartened, the distressed, those who are deceived, those who are oppressed, those who are confused. But when you come out of that cave, you are at an elevated state. Have you ever been through a hard-pressed situation, like really and truly the only thing left for you to say is, God, just kill me and done. Can't bother no more. But when God gives you the grace and the strength to go through and you come out, how do you feel? I'm sure you do not feel the same way as how you felt when you were in the situation. No, you feel strengthened. You feel like you could kill 20 Goliaths. Talk truth. Yes. And so you have a clearer vision. You become mature. You are at a higher vantage point from that of your enemies. And you are more ready, willing to do what God requires. It is time for us to break out. There are many persons, we go who are going to the same thing over and over, but we have to get radical. We have to come to that place, in God, to take that posture, to know when, okay, the time in Adullam is up, that season is up, and to go forth and pursue what God desires you to pursue. In the same manner, where Saul was determined to chase after David, so it is the same manner. God is chasing after us, and God wants us to have that mindset, that approach, that posture, to chase after what He has for us. How will you chase after what He has for you? You have to break out. You have to tell yourself that, okay, if I am a covenant keeper, if I serve the covenant keeping God, it means God is my refuge. It means that in the same manner where He strengthened David and the 400 men, God is able to strengthen me. So this is just my encouragement to you. There is victory in you. You are called for a particular purpose. Yes, you have to go through your seasons, of your cave-like situations. You have to go through that processing in Adullam, right? But let me tell you, when you come out, you'll be standing tall. When you come out, you'll be victorious. And Saul himself would have to apologize. The hard-pressed situations have nothing on you. Why? Because your God is bigger than those situations. God is bigger than Saul. God is the one who provided you that opportunity so that you can bloom, so that you can sprout out. The Bible reminds us, that the righteous are like a palm tree. The righteous are like a date palm. You know what a date palm is? Upright. It's not shaky. Yes, your situation may come to shake you, but you serve a God that is unshaken. And because you serve a God who is unshaken, He has placed that power in you to shake and to remove every single thing that will want to limit your life. So today I encourage you, break out and done. You have God, and God is interested to take you to that next level. God is interested to bring you to that state of maturity. And so you have to ensure that you tap into the frequency God has for you. I'm Jodian, and I'm here with Malut Advance, and we continue to say, break out, break free. The potential is within you. God has created you to break out, and no devil, no demon, no Saul can stop you from breaking out. Be blessed, be encouraged. Remember to like us on Facebook, subscribe to our page on YouTube, and continue, to share our videos with a friend. And I do hope that you were encouraged today. Shalom.